The planet is 4.5 billion years old and it has never stopped working for a single day. The result of that work is spread across every continent in the form of landscapes that the human brain is not equipped to process as real at first glance. Today we're going to explore 13 of them. Each one was created by a different force in a different place during a different period of time. None of them resembles the others in any way, except for one thing: their ability to provoke the same reaction in anyone who sees them. The feeling that something like this shouldn't be possible, and yet it exists with a precision and intensity that no deliberate process could have planned better. Some of them you already know by name. Others are going to surprise you. All of them will remind you that this planet has spent millions of years creating extraordinary things, and it still isn't finished. Let's begin our journey. Number 13. Mono Lake Tufa Towers, United States. In eastern California, on the edge of the Great Rift Valley that stretches across North America from Mexico to Canada, lies a lake with no outlet to the sea. For more than 760,000 years, it has accumulated salts and minerals without any river draining it away, creating waters so alkaline that they can damage human skin within hours, and so dense that any floating body rises several centimeters higher than it would in the ocean. Mono Lake has a salinity twice that of the ocean and a pH of 10, making it more alkaline than baking soda. These are waters where only algae, brine shrimp, and fly larvae survive, providing food for millions of migratory birds that make the lake one of the most important stopover points along the Pacific Flyway. The tufa towers rising from the water are the result of a chemical reaction between the lake's carbonates and the calcium-rich freshwater springs that emerge from the lake bed, precipitating calcium carbonate structures that can grow up to 9 meters in height. When the lake level dropped during the 20th century because of water diversions to Los Angeles, these towers became exposed to the air, creating the alien landscape that today makes Mono Lake one of the most extraordinary photographic destinations in the American West. The tufa towers at sunrise, with the Sierra Nevada mountains in the background, create one of the most extraordinary images in California. Number 12. Devil's Tower, United States. 264 meters of volcanic rock rising from the plains of Wyoming, with no visible geological context and nothing nearby that seems to justify its existence. Devil's Tower is the result of magma that solidified beneath the earth around 50 million years ago. Over time, erosion stripped away the softer rock surrounding it, exposing the hard core of what was once a volcanic intrusion of extraordinary dimensions. The hexagonal phonolite columns that form its surface, each between 1.5 and 2.5 meters in diameter, were created by the slow and uniform cooling of magma. They produce a texture that, from a distance, appears hand-carved, and from the base, seems impossible to process as something formed without human intervention. President Roosevelt declared it the first national monument of the United States in 1906, recognizing that it was the kind of place the country had a responsibility to protect because it was truly irreplaceable. The Lakota and other indigenous nations of the Great Plains have considered it sacred for millennia, and call it Matotipola, the Bear Lodge. Steven Spielberg's film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, transformed it into a symbol of what humanity imagines when thinking about contact with the unknown. Every summer, climbers from around the world arrive to challenge its vertical phonolite walls. Number 11. Chocolate Hills, Philippines. On the Philippine island of Bohol, there are 1,268 perfectly conical hills. The Chocolate Hills of Bohol are the result of millions of years of water erosion acting on limestone, a process that creates conical formations known in karst geology as mogotes. Yet in Bohol, these formations achieved a uniformity of size, shape, and distribution that geologists have never been able to fully explain. Most of the hills stand between 30 and 50 meters high and are separated by flat valleys of fertile soil cultivated by local farmers. From the main viewpoint, the sight of 1,268 domes, stretching all the way to the horizon, creates the impression of looking at something deliberately designed. The Chocolate Hills are the most recognizable symbol of the Philippines and appear on the country's 200 peso banknote. The hills are surrounded by palm forests and rice fields cultivated in the flat valleys between them, transforming the area into one of the most extraordinary landscapes in the Philippine archipelago. The island is also home to the tarsier, one of the smallest primates in the world, whose eyes are larger in proportion to its body size than those of any other mammal. Number 10. Mount Roraima, Venezuela. At the point where Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana share a border, there stands a tabletop mountain reaching 2,810 meters. Its summit has remained isolated from the world for millions of years and has developed its own ecosystem, home to species found nowhere else on Earth. Mount Roraima is the highest tepui in Venezuela's Grand Sabana, a sandstone formation more than 1.8 billion years old. Tectonic movements lifted it to its current height, while erosion sculpted its 400-meter vertical cliffs that drop directly into the surrounding rainforest. The permanent clouds that cover the summit most days generate constant rainfall, carving the sandstone into forms that exist on no other tepui. Pink quartz crystals, black rock labyrinths, pools of impossibly colored water, and carnivorous plants that evolved in isolation on the summit for millions of years. The English botanist Everard M. Thurn was the first person to reach the summit in 1884 and described the landscape as something that belonged to another planet. Arthur Conan Doyle drew inspiration from the Venezuelan tepuis when writing The Lost World, the novel in which dinosaurs survive on an isolated plateau exactly like this one. The only route accessible without climbing equipment requires 6 days of trekking across the Venezuelan Grand Sabana, passing through completely different ecosystems before reaching the summit. Number 9. Marble Cathedrals, Chile. In Chilean Patagonia, the glacial waters of General Carrera Lake spent thousands of years carving marble rock formations. The result is unique in the world. The marble cathedrals near Chile Chico are a geological formation unlike any other on Earth. The turquoise waters of General Carrera Lake, colored by the glacier that feeds it, enter the marble caves and paint the walls with blue and green reflections that change in intensity and tone according to the time of day, the lake level, and the amount of sunlight entering through the openings in the rock above. The only way to access the caves is by boat, and the experience of navigating between white marble walls stained blue by the reflection of turquoise water, with the stone ceiling only a few meters overhead, creates the sensation of being inside a cathedral built by water alone, without architect or blueprint, over thousands of years. The isolation of the region, which requires several days of travel from the nearest Patagonian cities, ensures that the marble cathedrals remain one of the least crowded and most extraordinary destinations in South America. The lake level changes between seasons, making every visit different from the one before. General Carrera Lake, with a depth exceeding 590 meters, is the deepest lake in South America. The lake is shared with Argentina, where it is known as Lake Buenos Aires, within a glacial basin that geologists consider one of the most remarkable in the Southern Hemisphere. Number 8. Uluru, Australia. The largest rock monolith in the world, rising from a flat plain with no geological feature for kilometers around that could explain its presence. Uluru stands 348 meters high, has a perimeter of 9.4 kilometers, and extends several additional kilometers beneath the surface according to geological estimates. What we see above ground is only the tip of a massive sandstone formation stretching deep into the earth in ways that are still not fully understood. The rock changes color throughout the day so dramatically that those who have seen it at sunrise and sunset describe two completely different experiences of the same object. Orange at dawn, deep red at midday, violet at sunset, and black beneath the moonlight. The Anangu people, the Aboriginal custodians of this region in Australia's Northern Territory, have been connected to Uluru for more than 10,000 years through Chukurpa, the system of law, history, and spirituality that regards the rock not as a geological object, but as a living being whose story is recorded in every crack and cave across its surface. In 2019, the Australian government permanently closed access to the summit, recognizing that the climbing ban requested by the Anangu for decades was a cultural right that no visitor could ignore. Today, the 10.6-kilometer base trail surrounding the rock is the only permitted way to experience it. Number 7. Wadi Rum, Jordan. In southern Jordan lies a sandstone and granite valley covering 720 square kilometers. Over millions of years, erosion transformed it into the most Martian landscape on Earth. Wadi Rum, known as the Valley of the Moon by the Bedouins who have inhabited it for millennia, contains rock formations reaching heights of up to 1,754 meters that rise above a plain of red sand in the form of towers, natural arches, and granite walls colored in shades ranging from orange and red to pink and violet. depending on the time of day and the mineral composition of each layer of rock. Human presence in Wadi Rum dates back more than 12,000 years and has left behind thousands of Nabatean, Thamudic, and ancient Arabic inscriptions carved into the rock faces. Archaeologists have spent decades cataloging them without reaching the end of the list. The British officer known as Lawrence of Arabia lived among the Bedouins of Wadi Rum during the First World War and described the landscape as vast, echoing, and godlike in its proportions. NASA has used Wadi Rum to train astronauts before Mars missions because its terrain is considered the closest match on Earth to the surface of Mars. Lawrence of Arabia, The Martian, and Rogue One were all filmed here, making Wadi Rum one of the most frequently used stand-ins for other worlds in modern cinema. Spending a night in a Bedouin camp beneath a sky free of light pollution is one of the most extraordinary experiences in the Middle East. Number 6. Fairy Chimneys, Turkey. In the heart of Anatolia, erosion spent millions of years shaping layers of volcanic ash. The result is a landscape of cone-shaped columns crowned with basalt caps that locals named fairy chimneys, and geologists classify as hoodoos in their most concentrated form on Earth. The fairy chimneys of Cappadocia range between 10 and 40 meters in height. Most are topped by a harder block of volcanic rock that resisted erosion while the softer tuff surrounding it gradually disappeared, creating the mushroom-like shape that makes the landscape instantly recognizable. The Christian communities that inhabited Cappadocia during the early centuries carved churches, monasteries, homes, and entire underground cities into the interior of these formations, some extending as many as 8 levels beneath the surface. The Gortame Valley, designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1985, contains the highest concentration of these formations and the rock-cut churches that made Cappadocia one of the most important centers of early Christianity. The region is also home to the underground city of Derinkuyu, excavated into volcanic tuff to a depth of 85 meters and capable of sheltering up to 20,000 people. It remains one of the most extraordinary underground habitation systems ever created by human beings. Number 5. The 12 Apostles, Australia. On the southwestern coast of Australia, the ocean has spent millions of years demolishing limestone cliffs. What remains are isolated columns that the sea has not yet finished bringing down. The 12 Apostles are actually 9 limestone stacks rising as high as 45 meters above sea level, and there used to be more. The combined effects of water, wind, and salt continue to reduce their number over time. The 10th stack collapsed in 2005 in full view of several visitors who were observing the landscape from the lookout point. The limestone along this coast erodes at a rate of approximately 2 centimeters per year, a pace that guarantees the landscape we see today will not exist in the same form a few thousand years from now. The stacks form when the sea carves caves into the cliffs. The caves become arches, and the arches eventually collapse, leaving the columns standing in isolation. At sunset, when the low Australian sunlight bathes the stacks in intense orange and the ocean surrounds them with white foam, the 12 Apostles create one of the most extraordinary scenes along Australia's coastline. The Great Ocean Road, which follows this coast for 243 kilometers, was built between 1919 and 1932 by veterans of the First World War as a memorial to the fallen and remains the most spectacular scenic route in Australia. Number 4. Antelope Canyon, United States. There are places in nature where light does not illuminate. It sculpts. Antelope Canyon in northern Arizona is the most extraordinary of them all. This slot canyon, carved by flash floods flowing through Navajo sandstone, has walls that in some places are separated by barely 1 meter and rise up to 30 meters high, creating a stone corridor that channels sunlight in a way no architect could intentionally design. Between March and October, when the sun reaches the correct angle at midday, beams of light penetrate the canyon through narrow openings above, producing visible columns of light that descend between the sandstone walls, in colors ranging from orange to red, pink to violet, and white to gold, depending on the hour and the season. The canyon walls, sculpted by centuries of flooding that wore away the rock along the direction of water flow, display a surface of curves and waves that resemble sheets of silk frozen in orange stone, and create an immediate sense of disbelief in those seeing them for the first time. The Navajo call it Se Biganilini, the place where water runs through rocks, and they control access in order to preserve both the landscape and the culture that considers it sacred. There are 2 sections, Upper Antelope Canyon, famous for its midday light beams, and Lower Antelope Canyon, known for its spiral-shaped walls. Number 3. Dangxia, China. Dangxia in Chinese means rosy clouds. Once you see the landscape this name describes in southern China, the choice of words feels entirely appropriate, and at the same time completely inadequate. The Dangxia formations in Gansu province are among the most extraordinary on Earth. Hills and cliffs of layered sandstone in red, orange, yellow, green, and blue alternate in perfect horizontal bands, producing a landscape that appears hand-painted across a scale of kilometers. These colors are the result of the chemical composition of each sediment layer, deposited under different conditions of temperature, humidity, and water composition over tens of millions of years. In the days following rainfall, when wet sandstone intensifies its colors and low sunlight illuminates the layers from a shallow angle, the Zhangye Dangxia reaches a level of color saturation that photographers describe as the most extraordinary they have encountered in any natural landscape on Earth. The park restricts access to the formations in order to protect a rock surface that human foot traffic erodes faster than any natural process can repair. The 6 Chinese regions recognized as Dangxia landscapes by UNESCO cover more than 82,000 hectares of red sandstone terrain in different stages of erosion, making China the country with the greatest variety of this landscape type in the world.
Number 2. Ha Long Bay, Vietnam. Off the northeastern coast of Vietnam, more than 1,600 limestone islands rise from the sea. Erosion transformed them into towers, arches, and caves, unlike anything found anywhere else on Earth. Ha Long Bay was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1994 and is considered one of the world's most extraordinary examples of flooded tropical karst. It is a landscape created when limestone is eroded by acidic water over millions of years, producing this labyrinth of formations that emerge directly from the sea. The larger islands contain interior lagoons completely hidden from the open sea, accessible only through tunnels in the rock that kayaks can pass through during low tide. Sung Sot Cave, with its stalactites illuminated by light entering through cracks in the ceiling, is the largest cave in the bay and large enough to contain several thousand people within its chambers. At sunrise, when morning mist surrounds the limestone towers and only their peaks emerge above the white haze, Ha Long creates one of the most extraordinary images in Southeast Asia. The wooden junks sailing among the islands at sunset add a human dimension to a landscape that otherwise appears completely untouched by civilization. The bay is also home to floating fishing communities that have lived on the water for generations among the islands without permanent contact with the mainland, preserving one of the most remarkable traditional lifestyles in Asia.
Number 1. Tsingy de Bemaraha, Madagascar. Tsingy in Malagasy means where one cannot walk barefoot, and that description captures with brutal precision what millions of years of water erosion on Madagascar's limestone have created in the western part of the island. A forest of razor-sharp stone needles rising as high as 70 meters above the ground, in such extreme density that moving through them requires ropes, harnesses, and constant attention to every step. The Tsingy de Bemaraha, declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1990, covers 1,575 square kilometers in the Meliki region, and is the largest limestone forest in the world. The needles form when rainwater dissolves limestone along natural fractures in the rock, gradually deepening them until vertical walls with knife-like edges emerge, continuously sharpened by ongoing erosion. Permanently sharp. The ecosystem living among these stone needles is one of Madagascar's most extraordinary. Endemic lemurs leap between the peaks, reptiles found nowhere else on Earth inhabit the region, and plants have evolved specifically to survive in the narrow cracks between the rocks. Seeing the Tsingy at sunset, when low-angle light casts enormous shadows between the stone spires, is an experience unlike any other place on Earth. The planet has spent 4.5 billion years creating extraordinary things without asking anyone's permission. The 13 formations we explored today are only 13 examples from a list that has no end. Every continent has its own. Every million years creates new ones, and the formations that exist today will continue changing slowly in directions that no geologist can predict with complete accuracy. The only thing that can be said with certainty is that the result will continue to be extraordinary for any human being who reaches these places and gives them the attention they deserve. If you enjoyed this journey and want to see more, leaving a like and subscribing to the channel helps us create more explorations like this one. Tell us in the comments which country you're watching from and which of these 13 formations you found the most extraordinary. See you on the next journey.